If you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
The chat today was brought to you by International Horse College. International Horse College was born out of a need to improve safety in the horse industry while considering the welfare of horses. And with the motto of people safety and horse welfare, that's surely got to be a place to go. Have a look now at International Horse College. It's a government-registered training organisation with a wide variety of courses for people interested in an equine career. Now, today we've got Dean Corke, and people may not have heard of Dean Corke, but I'm sure they will have heard of the Mounted Police, which we'll go through and talk about, and also a product called Corke, which we also will talk about. How are you today, Dean?
Good, thanks, Glenys. How are you?
Good. Dean, I'd like to introduce you. You've sort of had a bit of a trailblazing history with horses and horse products, but I'm going to start off, first of all, with a favourite quote. What's a good one that you think has inspired you or influenced you?
I'd have to say that the quote, horse health isn't an expense, it's an investment.
Yep, yes.
And that flows on to the way we think at Corke and just in general, that you can, take precautionary measures that'll stop a lot of heartache down the track.
Yeah. I think that's it. Expenses are things that you buy now and they're just gone out the window, but
Exactly.
Something about your horse health, that you could lose a lot more if you haven't got your horse's health. You could lose a whole horse. Yeah. Now, you started with horses, but you also were in the Mounted Police. Were you always going to join the Mounted Police, or was it like you just wanted to put your horse career somewhere? How did that all get started? What was you thinking along those lines?
Well, at high school, it was, I wanted to be either a policeman or a jockey, so it made sense that I could do both. And I landed at the Mounted Police down in New South Wales at the old Redfern barracks down there, which incidentally, a lot of people don't realise is the oldest continuous mounted police force in the world. I think that they're about 15 years older than the Canadian Mounted Police.
Wow.
Down at Redfern. I started there in 1990 and went through right up till 2001 and was discharged with an injury from riding horses. I fractured my back and then continued on in the equine industry with Corke as a equine consultant.
All right. We look at careers in the horse industry, and we like to bring in experts who lived and worked in the horse industry or have horse businesses. So it's quite a wide variety of people we bring in. But to join the Mounted Police, what type of person joins the Mounted Police? What type of skills do they need before they come in? What type of character traits? Just thinking, if you were talking to someone now and they were asking you about it, what would you tell them?
Well, you've definitely got to have a love for horses, because that becomes your partner out on the streets. But there's no point in joining the Mounted Police and thinking, great, this is going to be a pony club. You've also got to have an interest in basically, helping the community. And the combination of those two, it's an ideal job. However, having said that, for instance, in New South Wales, there might only be 2 or 3 positions come up every year for the Mounties. I believe there's 30 positions at the Mounted Police. So, it is a pretty premium position to get. So wanting to join the Mounted Police, you'd want your riding ability up to a fairly good level. The old days of the old bushy coming in and throwing his leg over a police horse and riding in, that kind of stopped around probably about 2000, and now the riding entrance exam to get into most Mounted Police forces, basically a high-level horsemanship.
Okay. And do you have to be in the police force first to join the Mounted Police, or you just go in straight into
Yes.
You do? Okay.
Yes, Mounted police is no different to any other specialist unit, detectives or air wing. You've got to have been a policeman for a minimum of 3 years, and then you'll apply for specialist positions.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, I'm really interested in Corbro as well, which I'm sure a lot of people have seen. I've seen it, quite a lot. I think the first time was out, University of Queensland. I thought, oh, that's interesting, like rubber floors. And, I think you supplied them. And then I was, at a stud yesterday and saw the Corbro product on the floor and the bedding. And I know that it's not just all over Australia, New Zealand, but it's around quite a bit if people have seen the rubber flooring. I don't know if anyone else does it, but how did this come about? How did you even get involved with that? You're in the Mounted Police Force. You'd think you'd be out there wanting to take your horse out, and then all of a sudden you're involved with this product that, even though it's a horse product, it's a little bit away from what you would be doing in the Mounted Police Force. How did that come about?
Well, a couple of things. You're not the only person who is surprised, like, with the Corbro product. I get calls all the time that I've never heard of it. And we've actually been around, we're coming up to 30 years in the equine industry. And the main reason a lot of people don't hear about Corbro is that we make everything down in Melbourne. Everything is made here in Australia. Because of the composites, it's not a rubber floor. It's got a rubber skin. It's actually a little bit more technical than just a standard rubber floor or rubber granules. It was developed in conjunction with Wollongong University, a team down there headed by Professor Chris Lukey in, I think it was 1992. We're commissioned to specifically make a composite for horses to stand on. And Sydney University got involved, and where I came on board was I was involved in the design, but one of the aspects where the mounted link was we used the first prototypes in the mounted stables to actually increase the lifespan of a lot of the old horses that had leg problems. And that's where the flooring came to its fore. That a lot of these horses that were getting onto the last couple of years of their police life, we were actually extending it because of the surface they were standing on, and that was the link between Corbro. And then later on, I became a consultant when I left the police force. But that's the link there. It's actually one of probably the first product that was designed specifically for a horse, taking in horses' weights, their movement, and going down that road. And getting back to why people don't hear Corbro is that because it's a specialist composite, we do runs every 6 weeks, and we've built up a following, or people who have used Corbro over the last 30 years, that ongoing clients keep our presses pretty well busy. Not to say that we don't want more people using Corbro, but we don't advertise as much as a lot of other equine companies. We do we'll put an ad in Facebook once every few years, just to let people know, our numbers and that. And we do some Facebook now and then. But yeah, look, it's our biggest endorsement is that it's used in a lot of universities that are at the top of their game and are known as experts. For instance, Scone Vet Hospital, all their recovery boxes, the Scone Vet and Clavelli and that have been Corbro for almost 20 years. A lot of the universities, not just horses, but also as dairy cattle. Camden Dairy Research Centre and the CSIRO. And just getting back to Camden Dairy Research, they actually had problems with their dairy cattle standing in an area while they were doing experiments. I mean, these cattle were in pens for anything up to 3 months, and the leg issues were horrific. And earlier on, the work that Sydney Uni did with the Corbro composite was put into that research, and the cattle had no problems. As soon as they stood on it, they could do the 3 months without it. So we learned very early on that you need to alleviate the joints. You basically have to suspend not just horses but also cattle, just by their structure, they're big up top and they have these skinny little legs.
Yep.
And if the surface isn't right, then they will develop leg problems. They'll get sore, but it's not just the soreness of the legs. Their immune system drops, and then you find that a whole host of problems come in, and that also applies to horses. So from our point of view, what a horse stands on is number one in the building blocks of a healthy horse. And if the surface isn't right, then it's a whole host of problems that can follow on.
Yeah, look, Dean, I'm just thinking, I've been to, and I'm having a look at the different places, even just Warner Brothers Movie World and, different places, New Zealand, Japan, Singapore, Malaysia, China, Philippines. I've been to a lot of these stables and research centres that are on your list, and I just thought it was rubber. What's the difference between Corbro and rubber? Because, I just thought, oh, well, that looks like a pretty good product. I should just, maybe we should just get some rubber in our stables. Our horses mostly live out, so we don't. But what is the difference between Corbro and rubber? What's been the research and development? Why don't we just go and get some old rubber and put that on the floors?
Well, look, rubber's great to put on the floor, but the main bit that will do is keep your horse off the concrete. Why a lot of people will look at our product and think it's rubber because that's all you see, but when it's in position. But the rubber skin is only 1/10 of the product. Under that rubber skin is a composite, which it's a combination of polymers, such as EVA and PEs, that have been formulated so when a horse stands on it, it actually mimics a fresh bed of straw up to about 3 foot.
Wow.
But constantly. Even a fresh bed of straw, when you walk into it, will flatten out within a few hours. So the starting point for the team at Wollongong University was to actually, we actually did in the R&D phase, put pressure sensors down on a bed of straw, 3 foot, and gauged what with a horse between, ranging from 250 up to 600 kilos, what the sensation of that was. And that was the starting point. So it was almost like your horse walks into a freshly laid bed of straw, 3 foot tall, 3 foot high, and it just stayed like that. And that was the brief that the university started with. And then obviously it got more technical with weights and that. But under that skin is something that when a horse walks on it, it's basically suspended to the point where the joints do not have any real stress on them, but the horse will sink into the product where it's massaged. And the frog gets the blood circulation. So it's like the main outcome is the joints aren't under stress, but there's a good circulation of blood going through the legs constantly. And with a horse in a box, they need that because they're stuck in the box and they're standing there. And we all know that most of them will stick their heads out at the door and they'll stand there. And a lot of the bedding isn't at that area, or it's kicked back. So a lot of the time they're standing there with their front legs on concrete or hard dirt. And
what about, transport? Can you use it for transport?
Well, when we started the intensive care boxes, we realised that apart from a horse being sick and requiring a box that assisted in its recovery, that one of the most dangerous times you'll have with a horse is transporting it. And that gets back to the floor again. So we started using the flooring in our intensive care boxes as transport flooring as well. So the Corbro composites comes in mats, and basically putting these Corbro mats in your float or truck turns your truck into an intensive care box. And that's really what you need for floating. I don't think a lot of people, I know people would know how dangerous it is, but just there was some studies done just recently, and Australian studies, and the statistics were that just transporting a horse on a regular basis, you're over close to 70% chance that your horse will be injured in a 2-year period. The Bureau of Statistics did a study here in Australia, And 25% of the people involved in that study said that their horses were injured during transport. And so that's, it's a quarter of all horses will have some type of injury. But some of the facts coming out of the study were pretty interesting. That only 6% of the people in there took it down to driver error. 72% on that study, and I've actually got some of the stats in front of me. 72% attributed the injuries from scrambling or slipping on the floor. So just looking at that statistic, I know that when you travel with a horse and you're driving, you'll take the corners slowly, and that's why that 6% of people said it was attributed to them, but they don't realise, and a lot of people have jumped in the back of a float, even going around a corner slowly on a hard surface. Yep. It is incredibly hard for horses. One of the things we did at the Mounted Police, which was a training exercise, you have to be certified in the Mounted Police to drive a police truck in a way that it's driven so the horse's health is optimum. But we were all thrown in the back of the truck at the floats and it really, you think you know it, but it's not really. Without bays and that, and even going around a corner at 20 kilometres, you can't stand. It's just the way the float goes, and it's and that makes you think about horses on there.
Yes,
and we also go to the next level of road vibration, and that which is fairly big on transport as well.
Mm-hmm. And, I'm just thinking, because you hear about horses, they used to load okay, but now they don't. So there's got to be problems there, even if they're not injured. They're still going to lose confidence with the whole travelling process if they do have to scramble or don't feel comfortable within there.
Oh, for sure. Look, one of the things I think so important on transporting a horse is just making sure that horse knows how to get on a float, and just taking that little bit of extra time to make sure that you've got it right, because that starts a chain event that if your horse isn't happy getting on the float and you get him on, then he's in a stressful mood, and then that continues on during the journey. So one of the things that can reduce the stress is just making sure at the beginning of that trip, when that horse walks onto the float, he walks on and he's confident. And if your horse initially is a little bit scared, well, then actually take the time to just work with them and get them onto that float nice and easy, and that will stop a lot of problems down the track. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, definitely getting a horse on and obviously off is a key starting point.
Thinking about all the times you would have seen people putting horses on and off, what's a common fault that you see when people are loading? Something that you can say, this is a common fault when you're loading or travelling a horse, and this is how to fix it.
Well, where do you start? There's that many different things that can go wrong on loading a horse that you can actually reduce before you get there. And one of the things is that if you're going to load your horse, before you load it on, is there anything around that could spook the horse? Mm-hmm. Just take the time to look around, make sure the horse is settled, and if it was trained, getting back to the initial, training a horse to walk on, and he's confident with you walking on, then if you're confident, he gains confidence from you, and it's straight on. So that's one of the tips. That also, when you're going to load them on, are there other trucks? Are there people around making noises? Could you wait a little bit? Just little things that can definitely help the horse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, and I'm just thinking about challenges with you. Just starting off with a horse business, because you said that you stopped being a Mountie and then you've sort of had a lot more to do with the business and Corke and everything. But what's been your biggest challenge? And, money aside, because that's always a problem, but is it like getting the word out to educate people on products? Or what do you think is the biggest challenge for you within your business?
There's a couple of things I could point the finger with Corbro, with this specific type of equine business. One of the things is the mentality that when you bring a new product in, some people just won't look at a certain product because it wasn't done the way that my dad did it and his dad.
Okay.
And I understand that because there's a lot of stuff that goes down the line. There's also a lot of technology that's coming on. Even Corbro itself, the first mats that we made in back in '94 are totally different composites now because technology keeps changing, and that's one of the things that when you've got a new product that a lot of people will. Well, you know what? I've got a rubber floor. What's wrong with the rubber floor? I've always had, floats have always had a rubber floor, but they don't understand that technology is getting better, and if you use it in an application, you'll find it eliminates a lot of problems that were experienced before. That would be one of the big things, and the other thing is getting the word out, I'd say, with new products. It's just there's a lot of products out there, and just trying to get your product to put its hand up and say, "Hey, have a look at me." That's one of the things. And we, like you said before, we're thrown in the rubber floor basket, so we're no different to a lot of the general public going, "Well, look, it's a rubber floor, this, and this." So for us, that's a big thing. And I still like to go back to the point, which probably isn't a sales technique, but when someone talks about Corbro, especially with transport, that I will find what area they're in and see if I can put them in touch with someone who's used it for a bit. Because if you back your product in and you know what it does, you know that the person who gets it's going to feel the same way. And a lot of the time, your best salesperson is someone who's not even associated with the company. And it's a win-win for everyone because you're getting feedback, but you've really got to believe in your product. And when you do, then, definitely get them to talk to someone where they do get an independent evaluation. And it actually works as a good sales tool.
Yeah. I'm just thinking Percy Sykes, you had a bit to do with him. He's a bit of a legend. Did he have much to do with the development? Oh,
definitely, yeah. Percy was involved. He wasn't involved in the development of Corbro. That was done with the universities of Wollongong and Sydney. But he was advised a lot of the development in the early stages. He actually had a vet practice not far from the first prototypes of Corbro, which were at the Redfern Barracks. And he definitely was a help. And Percy Sykes' understudy, Ross Teitzel, continued on with Corbro for many years. And it was good from being a mounted police. I could actually, Percy went back to the days where Tommy Smith and those trainers and that. And he was almost old school, but he was also open to modern ideas, and that was the good thing. And over the years working with Corbro, I've always found that a lot of the successful stud owners, a lot of the trainers, a lot of people involved who are open without blinkers on, pardon the pun, seem to be the most successful. So not just Corbro, but just any type of modern technique coming on or product, they'll have a look at it and they'll make the evaluation. And so that gets back to that mentality that, look, it's been done before, why should I change it? But the world's changing, technology's changing, and if you really want to keep up with it and see what's there, you've really got to step out and go, you know what, I'm going to have a look at that. Or not just products, but also training techniques. There's always people coming up with new training techniques. One thing I found fascinating was there was a study. We always keep up at Corbro with the latest trends in transport research. And one of the things that I don't know if your listeners, I didn't know this, but they attribute some of the stress in transporting to a horse not being able to see behind them. Now, and that's by just simply loosening the lead. the tie lead, and letting the horse, if he needs to look over his bum, will calm him down. And when they can't, and I didn't know that, but that was keeping up with research all the time, and it does help from that point of view.
Yeah. Just going back to, we started talking about Percy and Tommy Smith or TJ. I used to work for him, so I had a little bit to do with Percy, and they were both Tommy or TJ and Percy were both very, even then were very open-minded. I think TJ had gone to the States for, a month or two just to go over and learn from some of the leading trainers over there. But, he didn't just win premierships out of a fluke. He won them for a reason, was always up to date with the latest of whatever was going on.
Oh, for sure. And that's what I think is the key, that there's a lot of tools out there that can help you, not just your riding, but your animal health and also stable design. So it's changing all the time, and it's really my suggestion would be to have a look at this stuff and make an informed decision after you've looked at it, not just shut the gate on something that's new.
Now, tell us about the price, because people are always going to say, but how much is it? And the price, but what can we do as far as minimising the price? If we've got a double float and we've only got one horse, do we? You tell us what you've got.
Well, with Corbro, what happened was that we actually, when the product was developed, we had some agents that wanted to sell the product, and we actually went with Nature Vet Australia back in, and that was with a personal relationship between Corbro and the owner of Nature Vet, Jerry Rose. The link there was that he took on Corbro as an agent, and Nature Vet sold it for almost 10 years. Then when Jerry passed on, Nature Vet was sold, and we decided, because the composites have to be made here in Australia, we can't just get a generic foam and put it in. And the rubber itself also is made here in Australia, because we don't put fillers in Corbro, that the price is a lot higher than just standard rubber. It's one of those things, you get what you pay for. But unfortunately, we were so high over the price of normal rubber, and getting back to people think it's a rubber floor, that they were comparing our price to just rubber. So what we did was, we didn't renew an agent. We had a couple of other agencies wanting to sell Corbro. And what we've done, we identified that apart from the big studs and universities and the average mums and dads who want this, and they've got horses, just as valuable to them as a Danehill, that we did not take an agency on. And we've got a data bank of people who know where we are and pass the word out. We actually sell direct now from where the factory is, where the Corbro is made in Melbourne.
Okay.
And there is no agents, there's no stores. You actually go through the factory, and it's sold at a wholesale price. And you've also got the option to pick it up, or we can get some quotes on transport for the premium sheets. But what we also found is that the Corbro mats, the C1, which has been our product for almost 30 years, now retails at $155 a square metre plus GST.
That's not ridiculous. When you talk about the price of a horse or price of a new saddle, and it's ongoing thing. I thought it was going to be more than that, actually.
Well, if we look at stable floors, you could do a Corbro box, a 4x4, for about $2,500. Now, most people would say, well, that's pretty expensive. And the outlay initially, compared to, say, shavings or straw, it is. But the comfort's in the product. So once that floor is down, then the only thing that goes on top of Corbro is for the wetness. So what we say is you put 6 inches of shavings, and then you reduce, or whatever bedding you use, and you reduce it till you get to the point that suits the horse. So you're only looking at maybe 10% maximum of your bedding bill And you'll find that the Corbeau flooring will pay for itself in the first year, 12 to 18 months compared to normal bedding costs. And then after that, you're basically saving that every year per box. So if you've got 4 boxes, you could be saving up to $10,000 just on bedding costs. Now, that doesn't include driving out to get the bedding, and also doesn't include labour. For instance, the South Australian Mounted Police did all their boxes in Corbeau, and they found that they only needed half the grooming staff because they were just going in there and picking up the droppings and taking out whatever wet. And so it was in and out. So you also save a lot on labour, but you also don't have to worry that the bed is done right. That also reminds me, going back to the Mounties, we were actually trained on how to lay a bed in a herringbone format, which I don't think a lot of people know now. No. But that's how you'd lay a bed, so that the straw was intertwined and didn't break away as much, so you had that covering. But a lot of boxes today, you don't have to worry about how it's done. It's just basically putting the shavings down to capture the wetness of the horse. And what we found also is that we've had clients who have had Corbeau now coming up for 20 years, and it's basically saved them literally tens of thousands of dollars just on bedding. It doesn't look at the common stable injuries you get from a horse standing on something hard that you don't get with Corbeau as well. So that in itself, it's one of those things that you've really got to look down the track and see that it's actually going to save you money. But having said that, we also understand that not everyone can invest to spend $2,500 on a box or a float, and that's why we brought out another product called the Equine, which is a hybrid of the Corbeau flooring that really just covers the area where the horse stands. Okay. So instead of doing your whole float, you can now buy these mats that stick down, and they do stop the road vibration. They make your bay non-slip because the horse will sink into these areas. So it's a million times better than just standing on rubber floors, but it falls a little bit short than our premium product. But then again, you'd have to do the whole floor in that. And so with the Corbeau C1, you actually do the whole floor, and it stops all road vibration, alleviates the joint, stops vertical shock, and also stops frequency. With the pads, it'll stop road vibration and vertical shock, and also make that bay non-slip. And that's another thing too that I don't think a lot of people realise, that when a horse stands on a float, the float itself, the chassis of the float is stiff. All floats are built that way. So even travelling down a flat highway, you'd think you're pretty well right. There's no real curves in that or bumps, but they don't realise that just the mechanics of the wheels turning on the floats shakes the float and sends a vibration through the floor. Now, hard rubber does not stop that vibration. So if you can imagine, these vibrations are coming up through the floor, the hard rubber floor, and then they're hitting maybe a half centimetre of steel, which is the horse's shoe. And then from there, that vibration is going up through the horse's hoof, which, for best way to describe it's almost like a huge big fingernail. So if you can imagine this vibration coming up, and what we've found is that vibration on a standard floor will, after about 20 minutes, the horse will compensate by tensing its legs up. And that itself then opens up a whole host of injuries that, because he's tense, if he gets a vertical shock, you'll find the injury will be a lot more severe than if he was a little bit more relaxed. And you stop that road vibration. That is big for competition horses, because it can take on a trip, anything over 3 hours of transporting. A horse could take anything up to 24 hours to recover just from that trip. Now, with the Corbeau flooring, either pads or C1, you'll find that the horse is actually, its joints are alleviated during the transport process. So there is no tensing going up. Vertical shock's minimised. And also going around corners, you'll find they sink into the Corbro pads or the Corbro floor. So it does eliminate a lot of the potential injury, but it also eliminates a lot of other horse behavioural problems such as pawing, which could be caused by just being stressed or all the vibration coming up. And, so there's a whole host of things that lead down that track. But if you haven't got Corbro flooring, some of the things you can do to stop that is also make sure that surface, and I can't stress this enough, make sure the surface you're floating on is non-slip. That is so important for long trips.
Yep.
And most people will throw shavings down, and that's great because that makes it non-slip. The only thing with that process, which you've got to be careful of, is that shavings are great, but with a large horse, or any horse actually, the compression of that shavings under the hoof, under the frog, over time will turn into something that's almost like concrete once it compresses down. So you've got that hardness under it. So if you're going to use shavings on a long trip, when you pull over, fluff that shavings up again. Just get your hands in there, or just where the horse stands, and just move it up so you're kind of almost like fluffing it up, and we'll go through that process again. But next time someone does that, have a look where the horse is standing, and you'll find that shavings, if you actually touch it, it's pretty hard, and you don't want that. So you could do that, or the other thing also is the wetness in there. If you can monitor that, because that causes a lot of slippage as well. So they're the main things. But with the Corbro product, they're eliminated straight away because the horse actually sinks into it, and that gives them a good foothold pretty much. So.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking at dehydration's another thing too on the trips that I don't think, keeping that horse hydrated is really important to look at.
Ones.
And oh, for sure. Yep. And also scrambling and that. I've actually seen some video. I think everyone should see videos of onboard cameras of trips with horses in the back of floats. It's actually horrendous. It's not till you actually see it. And it's so important that without trying to spruik our product, I just wish everyone would realise when you float a horse, that's probably the biggest instance where something really big could happen. By that I mean career-ending, simple little injuries.
Yes.
And the other thing too is that when you compete on a horse, you might be an eventer, or the horse might pull up a bit sore. If he's got any type of soreness, the trip home, depending on how long it is, with road vibration coming up, could turn a minor complaint into a major complaint. It's that forward thinking. So, and if you've got a competition horse, that's one of the biggest complaints.
Coming to a competition, you travel a couple of hours to a competition, but taking 24 hours to get over that travel. You might even travel down the day before or the morning before the competition.
For sure. You need that rest. You need that rest. Well, one of the other things too is, just on some of the recent studies, a good way to find out if your horse is done all right on a long trip is you should be eating or drinking within about 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours of getting off that float. If he's not, well, there could be something wrong there. So just, and without being a name dropper, and he probably wouldn't want me to say this, or maybe he would, I don't know, but Mick Hickmont, a trainer, actually rang me up a few months ago, which was nice of him to do, but he had Corbro in his float, and he floated one of his horses up to the Birdsville Cup. And he specifically rang me to say that they were running behind time. They did the trip, and we're talking about, I think he was saying something like an 8-hour trip. Took it off the float and actually won the birds. Won the cup.
Wow!
And he said that was, and I know that if you talk to anyone, we've had Olympians at the last Olympics that actually on their airboxes insisted that or bought Corbro to put in the airboxes because their horse was so used to that alleviation of joints. But definitely one of the things we do find is on big trips, Corbro clients will say that the horse gets out just like he's walking out of the box, and we know that because their joints are elevated, and that is so important.
Look, I think it's a really good product. I think that, you've given me a lot more information about a product that I did have some knowledge of. I would imagine that if people are looking for that product, what we can do is get your contact details. We'll put them at the bottom of your page, which will be horsechats.com/Dean Corke, or just go to horsechats.com, search for Dean. But if someone's ready now, Dean, have you got some contact details so people can contact you about Corbro and the products, and even just transporting horses in general, because I think you've got a wealth of knowledge there as well.
Well, yeah, one of the things they can do is they can visit www.corbro, and that's corbro.com, and on there is basically a history on Corbro, where you'll actually see what you spoke about earlier on some of the sites we've done, and there's a forum that we hope that people will not just read on horse issues, but also if you've got tips, we actually have a section there that you can put on what you think or what you've done with your Corbro product that might help someone else. And the main Corbro product is done by ordering through, because that's more custom. But the Equivasses, the smaller pads I spoke about, that's just been introduced in the last couple of months. That we've introduced those pads so everyone has the opportunity to have this type of flooring when they're transporting, and those pads can be bought online and shipped anywhere in Australia. They retail for $3.99, and that'll do your front and your back legs. So you don't have to do the whole float anymore. You can just do one. There's also links on that site that will send you on to other sites with the modern or with the up-to-date statistics or research into animal health. And that gets back to what I said before, that there's a lot of stuff happening, a lot of technology that's improving equine health, and it's out there. It's just a matter of finding out what's best for your horse and you.
Yeah, and having an open mind, being open-minded enough to not just do what you've been doing for the last, year, 10 years, 20 years, not just what your parents or your grandparents did, but let's have a look at the latest research, because there's a lot of, time, expense, energy gone into the research, and we're all looking at horse welfare. So I think if we can improve horse welfare through all this research, then certainly have an open mind, go and have a look at it, and make your own decisions, but get a really good broad opinion of what's around. Yep. So thank you.
For sure. Thank you. Thanks, Glenys.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.